Karen demanded to search Grandpa's cabin, then cried when he slammed the door and cuffed her. The quiet mountain town of Pine Hollow had never seen a storm like Karen Whitaker. She swept into the community like a hurricane in high heels, her sleek SUV screeching to a halt outside the general store. Karen, a wealthy real estate developer, had come to claim what she believed was hers, a secluded cabin owned by 78-year-old Amos Reed, a reclusive widower who'd lived there for decades. Rumor had it Amos was sitting on a fortune in rare artifacts, and Karen, armed with a dubious legal claim, was determined to seize it. That morning, she'd stormed into the town hall, waving a forged deed and demanding a search of Amos's property, her voice shrill enough to rattle the windows. "I know he's hiding something," she barked, dismissing the stunned clerk with a flick of her manicured nails. The townsfolk whispered nervously Karen's reputation for bullying her way through deals was infamous, but Amos was a beloved figure, quiet and kind, who'd never harmed a soul. Karen's crusade began with a calculated charm offensive. She cornered locals at the diner, flashing a saccharine smile as she spun tales of Amos hoarding stolen goods. "He's not what you think," she insisted, her designer scarf fluttering as she leaned in. "I'm protecting this town's legacy." But her words rang hollow. The townsfolk knew Amos, who'd carved toys for their kids and shared firewood during harsh winters. Karen's accusations, though, gained traction when she bribed a shady lawyer to back her claim, producing a document that alleged Amos's cabin sat on land her family owned decades ago. The lie was flimsy, but Karen's wealth and aggression intimidated the small town's council into granting her a search warrant. By noon, she was marching toward Amos's cabin, a sheriff's deputy trailing reluctantly behind her, his face grim. The truth began to unravel as Karen's plan hit its first snag. At the cabin, Amos stood on his porch, his weathered hands gripping a walking stick, his eyes sharp despite his age. "You've got no right," he said, his voice steady but laced with fury. Karen scoffed, waving the warrant like a weapon. "This says otherwise, old man. Step aside, or I'll have you arrested." The deputy, a young man named Tim, hesitated, sensing the wrongness of the situation. Unbeknownst to Karen, Tim had grown up on Amos's stories and homemade cider. He radioed for clarification, stalling, but Karen's impatience erupted. She shoved past Amos, kicking over a flower pot his late wife had painted, the ceramics shattering across the porch. "Search it now," she screamed, her face red with entitlement. Then came the twist. A soft-spoken woman emerged from the woods, her boots crunching on pine needles. It was Clara, Amos's estranged daughter, who'd been living off-grid nearby. Nobody in town had seen her in years, and her sudden appearance stunned everyone. Clara, in her 50s with gray-streaked hair and a steely gaze, carried a folder of documents. "You're a fraud, Karen," she said, her voice cutting through the tension. Clara had been researching her father's land rights after hearing rumors of Karen's scheme. The folder contained proof. Amos's deed was legitimate, signed and notarized decades ago, while Karen's was a clumsy forgery, riddled with errors. Clara had already emailed copies to the county judge. Karen's face paled, but she doubled down, sneering, "You're nobody. This is my land." She grabbed a crowbar from her SUV and smashed another flower pot, as if destruction could cement her claim. The confrontation reached its peak as Amos, Clara, and Tim faced Karen on the porch. The deputy, now certain of Karen's deceit, radioed for backup, but Karen's arrogance blinded her. She lunged toward the cabin door, crowbar raised, shouting, "I'll find where you're hiding myself." Amos, surprisingly spry, stepped forward and slammed the heavy oak door in her face, the thud echoing through the clearing. Karen stumbled back, stunned, as Clara calmly dialed the sheriff's office, her evidence already in their hands. Within minutes, 2 patrol cars arrived, their lights flashing against the twilight. The lead officer, a no-nonsense woman named Sheriff Lopez, reviewed Clara's documents and turned to Karen with a steely glare. "You're under arrest for forgery, trespassing, and vandalism," Lopez said, snapping handcuffs on Karen's wrists. Karen's bravado crumbled. She burst into tears, her mascara streaking as she wailed, "This isn't fair. I deserve that land." The townsfolk, gathered at a distance, watched in silence, their sympathy for Amos outweighing any pity for her. Karen's downfall was as swift as it was poetic. The judge threw out her claim the next day, and her forged deed became the talk of Pine Hollow. Amos's cabin, it turned out, held no treasures, just memories of his wife, preserved in photo albums and hand-painted pottery. Clara, reconciled with her father, moved back to help him maintain the land. Karen, meanwhile, faced hefty fines and a ruined reputation. Her SUV was last seen speeding out of town, her dreams of conquest shattered. The townsfolk rallied around Amos, rebuilding his porch and planting new flowers, a quiet act of defiance against Karen's greed. In the end, Pine Hollow emerged stronger, reminded that truth and community outweigh wealth and arrogance. Amos, sitting on his porch with Clara, smiled for the first time in years, the weight of the ordeal lifted. Karen's tears had been her own undoing, a lesson in humility she'd never forget. What do you think? Did Karen get what she deserved, or was there another way to resolve this? Share your thoughts on justice and accountability.